I think we can move to the next slide. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Nick Gassiardo. I'm the communications specialist for the Electric Vehicle Association. I've been with them since summer of 2023, and we do a lot of work around the country. We're on multiple chapters for major DEEM and now NDEM events. We have presence in most of the states in the country, and we have a pretty wide variety of members all throughout the country that do all different sorts of work, including EV education, ride and drives, and other events.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Wilden. I'm a senior campaign advisor on transportation issues with the Sierra Club. Most of my work is on the East Coast, but I also handle federal work on transit issues across the country. Thank you for being here.
We can go to the next slide. So we're going to give a little bit of a rundown for the agenda today. I want to offer a reminder that this is designed for folks that have not organized a Drive Electric Earth Month event in the past, but maybe are considering taking on the role. Obviously, DEEM is pretty close. But even if you are a seasoned event organizer, this webinar is likely going to be too basic. This is just a basic rundown for those that are maybe trying to start it for the first time. Um, in my experience, planning an event can always be complicated, so sometimes it's good to have a good refresher. And you're welcome to stay on and contribute any expertise if you are a seasoned member about any advice you might have for newbies. um, if you are a prospective or very new event organizer, we are really glad that you're here. This is a good first step to kind of learn about what you could potentially end up doing with you in your own events. Please note this is designed to be a basic level thing. We do offer more support and more advanced webinars on, for example, marketing your events once you have them organized. So be sure to check out those as well. As shown on the agenda here, we'll have plenty of time for questions in the Q&A. Again, be sure to type your questions in there if you have any. We'll ensure most of the questions get answered as a priority, and if there's any specific advanced level questions towards the end, we'll try to answer those once the basics are kind of covered. And these questions also help future webinar offerings, because we also like to be able to actually help out where we can, and knowing what type of questions we'll have in the future will be useful for other webinars coming up. So let's get started. So a quick review, you might be asking, what exactly is Drive Electric Earth Month? This is an international campaign of in-person online events. We have about 200 events that take place across the US every single year. And each event is organized by volunteer EV drivers and advocates with partner associations like Electric Vehicle Association and Sierra Club. We also have other organizations like Plug in America, Drive Electric USA, and EV Hybrid Noir as well. And so over the last decade, DEEM and NDO, which is now NDEM, come October, Plug America is joined by some pretty big national partners. Again, Electric Vehicle Association and Sierra Club are on this one. And many event organizers associate with one or multiple of these campaign partners. And some of the benefits they have are having multiple hands on deck from different organizations. So we all provide different expertise, you would say, in terms of resources and opportunities for members and organizers all around. As an event organizer, not only do you get support from the campaign overall, but you can connect with or be associated with one of those organizations as well. So even if you are like currently an EVA member, you still get help from the people at Plug in America or Sierra Club, because most of these events that we'll have are not just one association affiliated, they're multiple. And of course, a big thank you to our sponsors. The sponsors of these from these companies help support the DEEM campaign, so we can provide resources to the events, such as event websites, event materials, national promotion of the campaign all throughout the country. And at times, individual events can benefit from national sponsors in very specific ways as well. For example, paying for the event kits. And now I will turn it to Rebecca.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So one really wonderful thing about event organizers is that people come to this role for all sorts of motivations, and everyone is welcome. So you might be an EV advocate, you love cars, you love EVs, you love electric school buses, you're an environmentalist or a conservationist, you're a community connector, or like us, it's our job. But there's so many other different motivations for people to get involved in this. And so, as an event organizer, you will be the lead for the event and its planning. So, this could mean that you are leading the overall coordination, but that doesn't mean that you will be doing everything or should be doing everything yourself, which is where engage and delegate comes in. The best event organizers know how to recruit amazing folks to help them, and they delegate tasks that each person can help with. So, making sure to share the load makes planning an event a lot easier on everyone. Of course, the fun part is actually implementing the event. Um, and you put in the work to ensure all details are taken care of. And that makes the event day fun and enriching for everyone. So try to find some friends, some folks that you know that would be willing to kind of help you out in organizing these events. And aside from the team of people that you recruit to help you put on the event, you'll also receive support because you're part of the network of events that make up the Drive Electric Earth Month national campaign. And that means access to a variety of resources and tools. So, as Nick mentioned, there is a website. On that website, you will find a myriad of things to kind of help you put on this event. There will be the recordings of these webinars on there in case you want to refresh your mind. There will be printed EV education resources that you can apply for. There are marketing resources. You'll have access to national partners to help answer questions. There is a network of EV drivers and advocates kind of at your beck and call. And there's also funding opportunities and grants to help pay for any costs that you might have for your event. So we just want to give folks a little bit of time to put their questions in the Q&A box. Um, and we will start to answer them. And that Q&A box is on the bar at the bottom. Awesome. So there is one question that came in so far. Um, and I will read it out loud. And Nick, do you want to answer this one since this has to do with you? Um, so the question is, I understand that both Plug in America and EVA can provide liability insurance for individual events. How do we obtain this? Can Plug in America or EVA provide that, or should I ask the event host to will consider less? Thanks.
So I'll go ahead and answer that. Thanks for your question, Zan. Um, as far as what normally goes on, if you're an active member of Electric Vehicle Association and you're part of a chapter, you have access to our own liability insurance plan. That's just for things that go on at the event that are not driving. So if someone trips and falls or something breaks, it covers that. Um, Specifically, I actually don't know about Plug-in America's stance on that. I do know that our minimum liability insurance is 1 million. I don't know if that host might be able to consider less. But if you are an active member in EVA, we can provide that. Otherwise, sometimes if we have venues that have specific asks like that, either we'll ask to negotiate, or the chapter might have to purchase their own separate liability insurance to get to that per occurrence amount. So it really kind of depends. But I would talk to the actual event host and see like if they're willing to work with something on that. Um, and I also saw a question from Dwight about if Nissan's a sponsor. As of right now, they are not for DEEM. That's just situation right now. Any
Awesome.
other questions?
Thank- So I'm going to pass it back to Nick for the next part.
All right. So, organizing event. Um, there's a lot of important questions that you should kind of be aware of when organizing event, from when the date should be, whether it falls into the campaign window, or if it's an all-season event. That kind of depends on your ability to organize one, what venues you have available to you, and whether or not you want to be part of the DEEM showcase in the first place. Now that obviously DEEM and now NDEM are both month long, there's a lot more opportunity to actually have those events in those times. And we like to say that we like to have them during those events because it's a big way to get it. There's a lot of communication with it, right? If you have an event during the DEEM period, there's a lot of communications on social media, online, on the website, and it's usually easier to get your event noticed by a broader group of people. Another big question is where to host an event. Typically, our events happen in a bunch of different places, whether they are like farmers markets, shopping centers, churches, business business places with large parking lots. It really depends on connections that you have and who's willing to host you. Um, a big thing that we see is that a lot of event organizers like to combine them with already established local events. So, one, you get a larger audience. Two, you get more people to come through your event that may not have thought about attending previously. And you get just more coverage from other social media aspects and local information sharing. Um, Workplace events are also a pretty big thing. It's a really easy way to be able to share the benefits of EV driving with your colleagues. And you might be able to show off certain specific things like workplace charging that your workplace might offer free level two charging, for example, or car sharing partnerships or something like that. Um, Having at a specific workplace also allows you to, you can encourage EV drivers to earn eval certification. And that'll actually be the next slide, I think, where you can get features and recognition and more highlights, and you can participate in workplace charging groups, for example. These are all really good resources and can help you and your colleagues drive electric and encourage your workplace to also support them as well. Um, and I think we could go to the next slide. So, what does an event typically include? For most of them, there's an in-person or online aspect. Nowadays, they're mostly in-person, given that the best way to experience an EV really is to basically, do a ride and drive. But the sky's the limit. You can have communications with EV owners. A lot of EV owners will bring their cars there, maybe not to drive, but they'll have them as static display, where you can check them out and ask the owner questions about them. You might be doing a film viewing or panel discussion. Um, and so the variety of everything there is really up to you. I like to tell event organizers to have a good variety. That way, you attract different parts of an audience. Because some people may just want to talk to an owner to see what it's like. Some people might want to drive one, and some might want to be able to do both. So having more options is always beneficial for an event like this. Um, and something that I think the workplace hosting thing is something that not always really comes up as an idea at first. It has a lot of great potential because you could have that venue already established because you already are an employee there. So there's less of a bridge to be able to get the approval to be at that location. And you can highlight how your specific business benefits EV driving with your colleagues and the community and helps expose your business to the workplace, which could encourage more people to attend. Um, Planning at a workplace event can also encourage your workplace to explore eval certification, which can help them in the long run as well. Sorry, it looks like our slides got a little bit split up here. Other events that we can also have at these DEEM events include like certain ribbon cutting ceremonies for things like new charters being opened up, exhibitor booths, both from your own members or chapter or third-party event attendees and sponsors. And you can show off things like private and public fleet displays that maybe your city has a new EV that they use for, municipal purposes or something like that. So all good ways to be able to kind of share what else um, can happen at some of these events. Another big thing is EV parades and caravans, whether they're showing off new models or showing how fast the adoption is growing in the local community. Those are all also options you could have at your event as well. And I'll pass it on to Rebecca here.
Awesome. Thank you. So while electric vehicles are obviously a large focus of the Drive Electric Earth Month events, there's also so much more that you can consider, including to attract an audience and to make your event robust. Electric bus or shuttle rides, electric school bus displays, electric boats, electric ATVs, e-bikes, e-scooters, e-skateboards. You can also have live music, local food trucks, or workshops, speakers, public officials, city proclamations, and policy announcements that you've been working with public officials on. And actually, one of my favorite events that I went to when I was living in DC is they rented a couple of parking spaces right in front of a brewery, and they had an electric car, an electric bike, a food truck, and I believe it was like a couple scooters and other things. And it was just really fun. It was kind of casual. And it was a National Drive Electric Week event. And it was incredibly fun. And folks could get food from the food truck. They could listen to the music at the brewery. They could go in and grab a beer or a water if they wanted to. And just as people walked by, they were talking to folks about the different options that are available.
So an important part about these events is making sure it's pretty inclusive. As you can see, events take all shapes and sizes, and regardless of what kind of event you're trying to organize, we always advocate that organizers keep in mind how they can make their event as inclusive as possible, just to have a larger audience. There are many things you could do to make an event inclusive, and today we're going to go over some of the options that you can think about when doing your event planning and keeping inclusivity in mind. Um, as you probably know, historically, EV adoption has been dominated by wealthy, white, educated men, driven by high upfront costs and limited model availability. That was the case for the last, the first maybe 10 years of EVs being relatively available to the public. But now that trend is shifting due to the growth of the used EV market, more affordable and diverse models, and increased incentives. So EVs are more accessible now than they ever have been before. So featuring used EVs in your event and even connecting with local dealers who sell used EVs, which if you didn't know, that's a whole separate category of dealers now, um, is a great way to kind of expand the way people think about the EV market. Because still, we hear a lot of, EVs are too expensive, I can't afford them. But now you can get pretty good used EVs for the low to mid 20s, and that's much more approachable to most people. Um, Another way to be inclusive in your event is to promote the event in multiple languages and potentially volunteers who speak different languages that may be prevalent in your community. You might also you can consider having signs in different languages. I know Plug in America has switched to event signage that's printed in both English and Spanish before. And this is important because some of our events are located in and focused in communities where a large segment of the population are predominantly Spanish speaking. And language shouldn't be a barrier to being able to drive electric. Um, you can also choose an event location that's easily accessible via public transportation. That might be easy to navigate, for mobility devices such as wheelchairs and scooters. Um, all those factors help make your event more approachable and more accessible to everyone. And it's always good practice to acknowledge that there are challenges and to be aware of solutions that are going to be present, particularly with EVs. The experience of owning and charging EV is one thing that has to be answered. If you live in multifamily housing, for example, it's a very different experience than if you have your own single-family home with a garage. Being mindful of and being curious to learn about how everyone has different living circumstances and being open and having conversation about how that might benefit them still really helps people get more familiar and more comfortable with the aspect of owning an EV. It can be useful also to invest some time being knowledgeable about the challenges that people may face as they consider EVs, and also be knowledgeable about any community solutions that are in the works to improve accessibility. So, for example, if your local community has a new ordinance that requires a certain amount of chargers being installed at multifamily units, for example, that can help give that person who's considering that little edge of knowledge that could be like, oh, I can do that now. So really important to be aware of all the local circumstances that you'll find yourself in with your event. And also, the most important thing is having a welcoming mindset. People come to your event with all levels of understanding and engagement. Some people have never even been in an EV before, and some people have driven 10 models and they're waiting to find their perfect next ride. It's important to meet them where they are and welcome them, which is why having EV owners present at your event is so beneficial because they can help ease the questions and the experiences of owning the EV to someone who is still unfamiliar with it in a way that usually dealers or those who are trying to sell EVs sometimes can't. And EV adoption can be intimidating at first, and showing everyone how easy it can be and facilitating people's experience into getting to the driver's seat of one is often the greatest strength of these events. So what else might an event organizer put effort into? So obviously it's important to be able to have a specific budget, and getting sponsorships and donations is critical to that because the more sponsorship you have, the less of a budget you have to attend for. Dealer recruitment can be really useful because um, some of that liability that we talked about can be taken out of the equation when you have a dealer there because the cars will be under their responsibility, for example. Also, it's really important to do the actual marketing and event promotion, which we have webinars as well that you can check out. Really helpful information there. Connecting with local EV groups that you might not know about, for example, your local EVA chapter, or maybe a previous event organizer, something like that. They're usually pretty present and available. Um, Also, it's really good idea to make sure everything you do is documented, so you have proof of it in case anything comes up. And make sure to do follow up with attendees as a way to be able to shape your next event if it's successful, or what you can do to make it more successful the next time. So all those are also really important to consider and worth putting effort into, which is why sometimes it might also be a good idea to have a partner or secondary person as like your right hand to be able to help with some of that. That way, not all the responsibility is on you because this can be a lot. We want to be able to be there to make it as easy as possible for you.
Awesome. So we're going to give you about a minute or so to put any questions that you have in the Q&A box. We already have one, but I'm going to give folks just another minute to do that since we're kind of at the end of our introductory webinar. And we just have one more slide after this one, or two more slides after this one, I think. And so I do want to emphasize that as you think of what questions you might have, um, is that you can start very small with the event that you plan. Maybe it's literally a neighborhood gathering of you and maybe some of your neighbors that all have electric vehicles, or someone's got an electric bike and you have an electric vehicle. Whatever resources and time you have at your disposal, you can plan an event and be successful. And so, as big or as small as you are able to handle.
And I think I see that question about how to feature used EVs. I don't see any other questions, so I guess I'll just answer this one here. Um, so it's really depending on your basically your local community and what's available to you. I know for a fact, for example, EVA has a chapter in Oregon, and some of the actual members of that chapter work for an electric vehicle used dealer only. So they only sell used EVs. So they have a lot of experience doing that, and they're able to have these events and have these cars available for people to test out. And they're also willing to actually sell them like right after the fact because they're having more people come in and check them out. That's not always the case, so it's a pretty special case. But some dealerships that have used EVs on the lot may be more likely to try to offload them. And so, for example, having one at a event like a DEEM event might be a good way to get those that might be still on the fence about if they can afford one, or if it's for them, they can go ahead and do a test drive with one, um, with potentially the staff of the dealership that's there, and kind of get more people's foot in the door with used EVs. Obviously, as you probably know, the used credit still exists, so up to $4,000 off of a at least 2-year old EV that's sold by a dealer. So that's the reason why I keep going back to a dealership is because they're the only ones that can offer the federal credit at the moment. So in that case, it would be probably most useful for a lot of those that are still looking to get their first EV that may be on the fence. That's up to $4,000 off makes it a lot more approachable for those in the market. But yeah, in terms of how to feature them, it really depends on what's locally available and who's willing to work with you. And again, having those high sponsorships is beneficial not only for you as the event organizer, but also for other sponsors at that event because they get that increased traffic from those audiences as well. So dealership might be more willing to attend your event if you're already partnering with a local farmers market because that's more flow through for them to be seen as well. So hope that kind of answers your question. And I don't see any more, Rebecca.
No, so we'll just do the last thing and then we can all hop off, or if you need to stay on and you want to ask some more questions, we can totally do that. But next steps, say yes to being an event organizer, and then determine your event date and location. You can change that if you need to update it. and you just want to get your event registered, which you can do on driveelectricearthmonth.org. Um, Once you're on the website, you can access resource pages and planning. And then we are hosting webinars like this to talk more about planning and marketing um, throughout the next couple of weeks. So feel free to sign up for any of those. We will also be posting the recordings of those events as well. So you can always refer back to them at any time if you might need a refresher. And so for any questions that you might have, you can email support@driveelectricearthmonth.org for anything. And so if you have a question about any questions about used EV tax credits, there is going to be a resource page on that. If you have a question about are there other events in my area, you can look it up on the map and try to figure that out. And so that email, once you send an email, all of the national partners figure out kind of who is the best to answer that question, and we will go right to that. And so I'm going to give it another little bit to let folks put in questions. And we already have one that I can
Yeah,
answer.
go ahead if you'd like.
Okay. So the question is, do you see any federal EV incentive changes coming? Yes, but they are not implemented yet. And that's probably about all I can say is that I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can get through Drive Electric Earth Month and they're still in place so that folks can get folks that are interested in EVs and have a chance to get one and kind of get that that rebate. But Nick, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add something that we know so you can kind of be more aware. If you want to purchase a qualifying EV and apply it up to that max $7,500 credit, depending on if the vehicle qualifies, um, keep your fingers crossed that Congress does not try to claw back the credit. Once you submit your taxes by April 15th of next year, you can uncross your fingers. But in the meantime, there's a lot of ambiguity about what will happen between now and whatever the next major change is. Um, Section 30D pertains to the tax year, so it's possible that Congress could still pass a law that would apply to vehicles purchased at any time during the tax year, which is why it's kind of a mess. And as I think Brian just mentioned, hopefully they won't be retroactive and clawed back tax credits. Honestly, we don't know. We don't have a way of being able to tell you what's right from wrong just because we're just as unaware right now because of how much of a mess everything is at the federal level. So unfortunately, yeah, we don't have much else to say about that just because that's the reality of the situation that we're in. So yeah, I got a question about do you know which makes are still eligible for tax credits? Your best option is to check Consumer Reports. They keep an updated list of any vehicles that qualify. I'm not sure if you're aware, Liz, but the manufacturer, the actual location of manufacturer has to be in North America. The battery components have to be a certain percentage sourced from U.S. friendly countries, basically. And so that list has changed periodically, not even every year, but even in between, because the manufacturers have switched battery chemistries, they switched production locations. So it's kind of all over the place. If you're looking for a new vehicle, the dealer that sells it to you has to tell you upfront if it qualifies or not, because they are the ones that do the actual tax processing for that credit because it comes off the hood for you. So they have to also be accurate with it because it affects them as well. But yeah, I would say check out Consumer Reports only because they're really very detailed about it and they keep a list that's as accurate as possible. Multiple models have changed if they qualify or not over the last like 4 months, so it's a kind of a messy game right now.
And that's why we're here to help answer any questions. I am going to do a quick kind of like share my screen with y'all to show you the website really fast since we've been talking about the website a few times. Let me, there we go. Okay, there we go. So this is the Drive Electric Earth Month website. You will see it says get involved, learn, dealers, sponsors, media, and log in. And so for me, if I want to look up if there's an event in my area, my zip code is 28216. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So let's see if there's an event near me. There is not one, or there's an online event near me. There's an in-person that's about an hour-ish away. Um, and so it looks like if I have the time, I should organize an event. What you can also do is go on to get involved. And this is where you would sign up to actually become, to organize an event. So obviously you would click on organize an event and you would type your first name, last name, email. Um, and then it would kind of go through a other couple steps just to kind of make sure that you're on board. Um, and so, but if you first kind of want to see like, oh, is there an event in my area? You can kind of do what I did and see that, type in your zip code and see if there's an event that maybe you could volunteer at. Um, and so this is the website. There's, of course, there's more and more on here. But you'll see on this Learn tab, there's a lot of information. I'm not going to scroll all the way down because I don't want to make folks dizzy from all the scrolling. But it has contents on what is an EV, how do I charge it, what does an EV even look like, where do I start? And so it kind of goes from there. Um, and so I'm going to stop sharing this because it looks like we have more questions. So let's see. Someone is telling me I should be an organizer. I know, I should. I should. Actually, normally the city of Charlotte normally organizes one for Drive Electric Earth Month or National Drive Electric Week. And they didn't do it for National Drive Electric Week this last year, so I need to call up our mayor and see if I can twist her arm into doing another one, since they're converting their fleet to all electric, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and
Um,
something else, I guess, to jump in on, just to say, that list obviously looked short when Rebecca pulled it up, but that's also because this is the time when people start registering their events to be a part of the actual event itself. So in the next like 2 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot more listed there. Typically, the beginning of March to the end of March is when everyone, does all their homework and puts everything together. This is the main organizing time, and we see the event numbers go up. We were at like I think like 20 or something last week, and now we're at over 50, I believe. And that was as of like Friday, I think. So the numbers are going up. And to answer Dwight's question about training for volunteers, um, that can be applied different ways. We have resources for you to be able to help get your volunteers kind of in order on the website. But as an event organizer, that's up to you in terms of how you want to train them. It also depends on how complex your event is, how many sponsors you have, the anticipated crowd sizes. There's potentially a lot you could do. There's potentially little that you can do. It really depends on how large your event is and how many different things you're going to have going on at the same place. But yeah, we do have some basic volunteer training resources on the website. But in terms of your own event, you as the event organizer could be the trainer. Maybe you have two or three other helpers. Maybe you have a whole team. It really depends a lot on the circumstances of your individual event.
Yes, for an example, there is a caravan that someone is organizing in Austin, Texas, actually, that I'm trying to get my friend to participate in. And so they need volunteers to kind of stand at corners to make sure that the parade is turning and that sort of thing. But not everyone is going to be doing a parade, so everything's kind of going to be different for each event. Um, and so that event is very unique. And the one that I talked about, that was a food truck, an electric vehicle, and a e-scooter and e-bike outside of a brewery in DC. They didn't really need volunteers. They just needed the folks that owned those to kind of be out there and talk about them. So it's literally it's um, up to kind of every event. But if you do need some like help and or you want to talk to someone, feel free to email um support. Hold on, I have to look at it one more time. Support at driveelectricearthmonth.org. And one of us might be able to kind of like send you some tips and tricks if you're trying to figure out how to kind of train those volunteers for your event.
Something else I'll jump in and say, typically, if someone wants to volunteer for an event in the first place, they typically don't need a lot of training because they're usually interested and or involved already in the space, so they probably already know a lot. It's usually not like someone's first day on the job with something. It's usually someone who's pretty experienced. When, at least in my experience, for volunteers for events, they're pretty aware of EVs. They know how to handle crowds, that sort of thing. So typically, it's not a huge worry, but yeah, that's just from my experience. Don't see any other questions. If anyone has any more questions, we still have some time, so feel free to ask. That's what we're here for. Yeah, the parade
Yes.
idea is good exposure. That's exactly why it exists.
Yes, I will try to find the link to that event. I need to send it to my friend anyway to see if he'll join the parade. So I'm gonna try to find it and put it in the chat.
Julius, I just saw your question. All this will be published likely next week once the recording is done, and it'll all be available. And we'll actually have another one of these webinars as well as marketing and organizing your DEEM events as well. Um, so you can check that out at driveelectricearthmonth.org.
We'll give it one more minute for questions. And y'all been asking some great questions, by the way. It's always awkward when you get on these and there aren't any questions and you're like, I'm just gonna, you know, play on my phone while it's Q&A time, but not with y'all. Y'all have some good ones.
And like Rebecca said, if you have any questions later, that support email is really useful. The Plug in America team is really good at getting responses out quickly. So um, don't be afraid to ask them if something comes up later and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. Um, and like we mentioned before, obviously this is just being an event organizer, but we still have the marketing and organizing your actual DEEM events as separate webinars that go more in depth about what to do to make your event, obviously better, more straightforward, better working, and um, more successful for you.
And just as a reminder, if you have questions, we're not able to unmute folks. So in the bar that's kind of like right below where you see our faces, you'll see something that says Q&A, and you can type your question in there. What methods of data collection do you recommend for events? This is a great one, Nick, because I feel like you've been around for a while and it's changed a little bit. So this one might be good for you.
Yes, so that's a really good question, as Rebecca said. So for when you register your event on the DEEM website, there is a collection system where as you, the organizer, you get all the information about who's registering to attend, whether it's a guest, volunteer, or whatever. And you'll get a report at the end of your event about all the attendees and that sort of thing. Right now, we are working on putting together a more comprehensive survey for attendees where they can answer a pretty broad range of questions about um, their overall experience at your event, what they liked, what they didn't like, things that they think you should do again, that sort of thing. Um, we were working on that last year, and I believe the rollout is supposed to happen for NDEM now. I'm not totally sure at the moment, but you'll get a subset of information that can help you. Now, you as the event organizer, you can have your own post-event survey as well, where you can ask attendees what they liked, what they didn't like, their overall experience, that sort of thing. Um, the if it's in terms of what we recommend, it's really up to you. What do you want? What data do you want to get out of your event? Um, and yeah, so like you said, like my questions about the actual event. Yeah, so you can ask your attendees to maybe fill out a simple card at the end, or have them available at your registration tent or something, and say, whatever specific info they want to share with you, whether it's feedback or reviews on a certain sponsor or something like that. That's really totally up to you. There's no restrictions on our part about what you can ask and what you can't ask. It's just what's going to benefit you as an organizer in order to do it again and make it more successful the next time. Let's see, Julius. Just read your question here. That would be a question for support and or our webmaster. I actually haven't had that issue before. I don't know if they have a direct solution for that. I mean, it's a pretty unique situation. I didn't realize that it overrides, but I am not in charge of the the webmaster process, so that would be someone else. But yeah, but if you emailed support, they'd be able to direct you to the webmaster and or a solution for your specific issue about that. Because I have not encountered that before.
We have a question. We are considering hosting an EV Expo for Drive Electric Earth Month. We hope to garner local support and support from volunteers. We want to educate our attendees. That is wonderful. So if you I don't know if we mentioned this before. So if you sign up your event today and you can request a packet of information to be mailed to you, the deadline is today for that packet. And so it is a packet. It has information from all of our sponsors. I know for the Sierra Club one, it has information on um, federal tax credits and states that have tax credits or rebates as well. And other organizations have educational materials on those things, or excuse me, on a variety of things. So just make sure when you sign up your event, you kind of, I believe you just click a box that says, yes, send me the materials. But if you aren't ready to register your event, all of those materials will be available on the website. So if you wanted to print it out for folks, if you aren't able to make the deadline today to sign up to have it mailed to you, totally fine. All the information is going to be on the website.
And to piggyback off of that, all the local organizations that all the sponsors of the organizations, we provide our own specific, as Rebecca said, like informational papers, pamphlets, that sort of thing. And they all are specific in like what they cover. That way, there's not a lot of overlap. So, like as Rebecca said, Sierra Club is about credits and rebates. Our EVA one is about all the ways to be able to you can benefit from owning an EV and driving an EV, and a specific way to get your questions answered as a little postcard that we give out. But all the sponsors do different things in that kit, so they're not like overlapping information.
And another great resource, and Nick has mentioned this before, is there are more and more electric vehicle kind of like groups. I've seen them, I think, in almost all 50 states plus DC and Puerto Rico. And so, like, if you're able to just like even Google or Yahoo or whatever search engine you use, and search your city or your state and type in electric vehicle groups, a lot of those folks want to help with education, and they would be wonderful volunteers. Um, and so if you have folks that have their electric vehicles, they probably want to educate folks on theirs and the pros and the very few cons that they have. And so really just kind of lean into it. And as cars get registered for your events, those folks are also going to be educating. And so um, education is incredibly important right now to kind of continue getting the good word out about electric vehicles while there's kind of the naysaying that's happening in other places.
And as we feel the best way to get people to switch to EVs is to put them in the driver's seat. So these events are a great way to do that. And at least in my experience, usually it's the first 10 seconds they're driving, they're like, ah, I get it now. And so we like to make sure that that happens in more and more places, even with the uncertainty in the federal space, at least.
Awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, we will close out.